Hello and welcome along to Extra Time here on LCFC Radio and LCFC TV after Leicester City's disappointing FA Cup tie away at Nottingham Forest on Sunday. Gerry, Taggart and Matt Elliott join me, Dan Bates, to talk about that game, to preview the away Premier League game with Liverpool on Thursday, and we'll also look at some of the other results in the FA Cup as well. Firstly, how are you both? Matt, I know, well, the three of us spoke yesterday, didn't we, around the game. You were there and you've been able to travel back and have a little bit of a think about it. It was a bitterly disappointing game, as you've said already.
Yeah, in every aspect, really, of the football-related issues and also off-field activities, weren't particularly impressive either at certain times. But it was a tough one to take, wasn't it, for a lot of reasons, really. And I think the supporters that went in their droves will be probably regretting the fact that they did manage to get the tickets ultimately and make the effort, because they weren't presented with much to observe, were they? It was miserable stuff. I mentioned that word yesterday, and not just in terms of the weather. The performance that they were given yesterday was, there wasn't much to hold on to take positives out of, as a lot of people say after games when things have gone adversely. But they, the more you look at it in hindsight and you get chances to watch the replays and how avoidable the goals were, to certainly make an improvement on the defensive efforts. And it was quite startling, really. Quite startling. And at times yesterday, at times they had good possession of the ball in decent areas for periods of the game, but not enough. But also at times they were overrun, and Nottingham Forest was swarming all over them at certain occasions. And I suppose most surprisingly of all, didn't just show more sort of heart and appetite, but they showed more finesse and quality in the game, really. And it was a difficult one to take. And it's going to take some responding to with a huge game coming up Thursday.
Yeah, we'll talk about that obviously a little bit later. We'll also talk about the individual goals, Gerry, but just another wider general remark on the day of just how disappointing it was, because so many of those Leicester fans had been looking forward to this fixture. We'd been looking forward to this fixture for so long.
Yeah, I think right in saying it's been about 8 years since both the teams played each other. A lot of the players wouldn't have played in that fixture. I know some of them did, some of them didn't, or some of them were on the bench or still in the squad. They played in the last time both teams met. But, Matt's right. I think going into the game and listening to what Brendan had to say in his pre-match interview, I think the sound bars coming from that were absolutely spot on. But what you seen on the pitch didn't reflect what Brendan, said in his pre-match interview. I.e., you have to compete, you have to win your individual battles, and then the quality comes out. And you said we're going to talk about the goals. For me, the first goal epitomised it, where Forest basically won the battle in that midfield area. And as Matt said, they had some quality. I said it yesterday, I said it again, they've got 2 or 3 players in their team that could quite easily step up a level. And they showed it. They had more fight, more bite. And I think sometimes, you can overanalyze games, you can go in depth too much. Yesterday was one of those games where you strip everything back and you say, right, this is a derby match. This is not necessarily about tactics or playing neat and tidy football throughout the game. This is a game where the physical side is going to come well and truly into it. You've got a championship team, which I said before the game yesterday, championship ties invariably play a more physical a quicker style of football, not necessarily as much neat and tidy football as you would see. The pitch obviously played a part, the conditions played a part in that as well. And, you know, Forest played the conditions and played the game better than Leicester did, and deserved the win. You know, there's no other way of looking at it. Forest were the better team on the day. They competed more. And when it came to the crunch situations in and around the box, they were able to put the ball in the back of the net.
We said before the game, Matt, we were talking about derby games, weren't we? And how sometimes they maybe don't live up to expectations, or they can be quite cagey affairs. This one obviously wasn't the case there. But I think in the opening 5 minutes, James Maddison did a really good piece of play. He dummied past a midfielder, didn't he? And he was just cleaned out. And it was early on. And that, again, maybe summed it up a little bit, that the Nottingham Forest players were really up for it. And they wanted to put their foot in against the Leicester players.
Yeah, I think that was just one example. They were on a mission, weren't they? Not Forest, I think, and Leicester weren't ready to react to that as well as they should have. The game started not how I would have expected. To be fair, a couple of forays forward from Nottingham Forest, but generally 15 in 20 minutes, Leicester was looking quite comfortable. I wouldn't say they're in cruise control, far from it, but they were quite comfortable, even though there were danger signs already, particularly down the right-hand side of Nottingham Forest with Spence and Johnson linking up well. But, general play, Leicester looked decent enough. They'd already shown that they could cut Forest open without threatening any finishing touches at that stage. But it was almost, I don't know, perhaps that's possibly the worst thing they needed to do. It maybe gave them a false sense of confidence, really. They might have thought, we were expecting, a full-out assault from Forest early on. That didn't really happen. Perhaps subconsciously, Leicester got sucked into thinking, right, well, that's the best they've got. And we haven't really got going yet, but we're comfortable enough. Perhaps the rest of this game is going to, if anything, their efforts are going to subside and we'll really take control. But they didn't. They upped the ante, didn't they? And there was much more cut and thrust about Forest's game. Physicality, they were more robust as well. And they recognised areas that would hurt Leicester, i.e. putting the ball in the box regularly with quality, whether it be from free play or set plays. And Leicester didn't seem ready for that. They must have been prepared about it. They must have been told, what sort of a side and what sort of an occasion it was going to be. But not switched on enough. Not switched on. And the best, 6, 7 players on the pitch were all in a red shirt. And that happens. You're asking for trouble, isn't it? And hugely disappointing. That will hurt everyone involved, supporters, manager. They very much like to think so, the players, because they weren't beaten by a last-minute breakaway or, unfortunate. They hammered Samba's goal for the duration of the game. It just wasn't their day. Almost the opposite occurred, and so many gaps, so many deficiencies in the game, particularly in that defensive unit, which Brendan Rodgers will recognise and realise it's not at its strongest right now, but it's probably the strongest it's going to be for a little while. That back four, and it's got to cope better.
You said, Joe, that the first goals kind of summed the day up. The second one was so disappointing, the manner of conceding that goal.
Yeah, I think, again, you could put 2 of those goals, the first 2 goals, you could say, epitomised the whole game and the sort of, how Leicester didn't adapt to the situation, the occasion as well. instead of, Daniel Amati trying to play that back pass instead of clearing his lines. And yes, it's agriculture football, but as I say, sometimes you've got to pick a game out for what it is. Not every game of football is the same. You can't always play the same style of football in every single game of football. And yesterday was one of those games, like I said, the conditions, the pitch isn't like the pitch at King Power, the atmosphere, and obviously the occasion, a fourth round tie in the FA Cup against one of your nearest teams, a derby match away in the fourth round of an FA Cup against a team you haven't played for a number of years. And so you just, everything you could want to chuck into the melting pot was there yesterday in that game. And and that is why you can't always play the same style of football you want to play for every game. And yesterday epitomised that. And obviously the mistake that Daniel Amati made in trying to go back to the keeper instead of probably trying to clear his lines. And obviously you've still got to finish it off. And it was a really neat finish, I have to say, from Johnson, who I thought was excellent, caused all kinds of problems. And yeah, that just sort of epitomised it. They were up for it. They had the bit between the teeth, the eye of the tiger, whatever you want to call it. And they punished us yet again for a bit of sloppy play.
Even the third one as well, Gerry, we were confused about how it had gone in, but actually Gerry Tielemans on the post. At first you think, how has he not cleared it? But then you see the slow-mo replay. Danny Ward gets a little touch, doesn't he, that just takes it away from him on the post. Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think at half-time, or sorry, after the game, whenever it was, I can't remember, I was so no, it was 3-0 at half. Just before that, I think it was Worrell had another free header and it hits him on the shoulder. And really should be hitting the target at least, if not going flying in the back of the net. So that was a warning sign from another set piece where Worrell's, missed a great opportunities to put Forest even further in front. But yet again, the ball comes in. Okay, it's not a power header, but he's got direction. It looks as if Gerry Tielemans is in a good position on the line, to be fair to him. He's come across from his near post. He's come to the right slightly from that near post. And as the header's, coming down and bounced in front of Danny Ward, you're thinking, right, it's going to go over his hand and Yuri's going to clear it. But unfortunately for Danny, as you would expect, he's trying everything he possibly can to get that ball away. I don't think there's no blame as far as Gerry Tielemans and Danny Ward are concerned. Obviously, you've got to look at free headers in the box. That goes without saying. But the actual goal itself, Danny Ward, things happen far too quickly for Gerry Tielemans to give Danny Ward a shout and say, leave it, I've got it. That's just not possible. So it's just a little bit unfortunate that Danny can actually get a little fingertip to it and inadvertently take it over or take it to the side of Gerry Tielemans' head, where he is actually in a good position to clear it. So it's a bit of bad luck, but questions still have to be asked about Worrell getting 2 free headers from 2 corners. Even if Gerry Tielemans, Matt, had called and said that it was comfortably going to come to him, I don't think you'd ever expect a goalkeeper to trust your defender and leave a ball in that situation. Danny Ward was always going to go for it.
Yeah, exactly. You haven't got time to shout from behind and then the goalkeeper reacts, really. I don't think many defenders or midfielders in this case are brave enough to risk it, just in case. Or as a goalkeeper, they're not going to lie the responsibility on someone else when they can affect it themselves. But I mean, imagine Danny Ward does let it go and Tielemans slices the clearance, etc., or whatever, and then back into net. One of those days. That was highly likely the way things were going. But no, that was unfortunate. I thought myself as well at the time, without the benefit of a replay, I was thinking, how's that managed to sort of squirm and wriggle its way into the back of the net? But Notts Forest weren't too concerned about that. They were wheeling away, celebrating, weren't they? And you saw the dejection from the players as well as the frustration, realisation that 3-0 was like a world away from 2-0. 2-0 was bad enough, but you'd think over time that was left in that game, it was redeemable. But having said that, they got themselves back to 3-1, and a little bit out of the blue with a exceptional goal as it happens. Despite
he took it really well, didn't he?
Yeah, it was a great goal, wasn't it? Swift move from back to front, goalkeeper Samba, what he was thinking at the time. But although, you could equate it to, some people say, 2-0 at half-time is a dangerous scoreline. Yeah, I'd rather be 2-0 up than 2-0 down. But the point is there to look at, and you get one more goal and then the pressure's right on. But you leave yourself open, as Leicester were doing all game, really. It wasn't just that they were forcing the issue. Obviously, if you do concede that one more goal, it's game over, and that proved to be the case, wasn't it? But, problems in lots of areas, really. Like, I don't know. Like, individual errors have a big bearing on things. They do. And, in this instance, like Daniel Amati on the first 2 goals, obviously semi-culpable with the first one, in my opinion, largely wholly culpable for the second. But there was reasons why Leicester were in those areas where, if you made a mistake, it was going to be costly. Slow to close down, as Gerry mentioned, at different times in recent games. Slow those crosses. They know they're not very good at dealing with crosses. The utmost to block them, get them closed down. The general, I don't know, there was a general physical nature with quality about Nottingham Forest. And Leicester didn't show too much of either yesterday. And it also didn't show too much common sense at times.
How did Leicester recover from it, Gerry?
Well, that's a very good question, Dan. I think the first thing is you need to try and regain some kind of confidence in the dressing room, no matter what has gone on, what went on yesterday. It's important that they have to move on, but I think there's a lot of soul searching what will have been done yesterday and last night. And then today you have to, a lot of people, and I'm talking about the players and the management and coaches, be waking up this morning, right? How do we lift ourselves? How do we get ourselves ready for this game on Thursday? So a lot of soul searching. Then I think as far as you can analyse this game to the nth degree. We can talk about it until the cows come home and criticise and nitpick and pick points out of it. And that's not going to do any good, Dan, from here on in to Thursday. You have to move on. And you have to move on quickly. Because if Leicester turn this result around and the performance around on Thursday night, then I'm not saying it'll be forgotten about. I'm not saying that. But it'll go some way to, laying that ghost to rest, and that's Forest ghost to rest. It's as simple as that. And so it's important for Brendan, his coaching staff, that everyone is back on side this morning, and they then try and work out a formula to go into this game on Thursday night. And that is the only solution you have as a manager. There's no point dwelling on what's gone for too long. Yes, as I said, you have to pick the bones out of it to a certain degree. And there'll be certain things that will have to be said in that dressing room after the game. But after that, you have to move on.
Any other FA Cup games, Matt, that piqued your interest over the weekend?
Yeah, I suppose, numerous really, weren't they? Numerous close, unexpectedly close games, like lots of Chelsea, Plymouth, wasn't it? And then West Ham against Kidderminster. And
that was the one, really, wasn't it? That game.
Yeah. I didn't get to see too much of it, but saw the highlights, and they were just an inch away, weren't they, from certainly being tested in penalty shootout, etc. But I think probably the one certainly that I took most notice of was Bournemouth Boreham Wood. Yesterday, almost directly after the Leicester game. And what an achievement that was. So majority of the first half as well, they didn't nick a goal and hang on. They could have been 2-3 up at half time. All hands to the pump in the second half, as you'd expect. But it was a miraculous result for them. Actually, non-league up against what a lot of people think are going to be Premier League team next season. And all the players that they've got, that was a stupendous performance and result. And battling away, there were a couple of players on Boreham Wood's side that were sort of carrying the sort of timber I carry around these days, and they didn't give up. They gave their all, and again showed some quality like Notts Forest. That was wonderful to see.
I read somewhere, I've just had a check there, they've not actually conceded a goal yet, Gerry, Boreham Wood, and
really?
Non-league side, and they've got into the fifth round, and they haven't conceded a goal in the competition.
Yeah, I think, I think Bournemouth made 9 changes for the start of that game against Boreham Wood. And this is what I'm talking about. Me and Matt, we've been there. So that's why we can sit here and talk about it against Wycombe in the quarterfinals. You come slightly off the ball, and there's a good chance you're going to pay the price. And we spoke about that yesterday. You can't afford to give lower league teams let me rephrase that. You've got to give lower league teams the respect they deserve in a cup competition. They're there for a reason. It's as simple as that. Bournemouth made 9 changes at the beginning of that game, and they paid the price. Matt's talked about Chelsea had a struggle up, West Ham had a struggle up. And sometimes, yes, in the end they get through and by the skin of their teeth on both accounts, and that's because you don't give these clubs the respect they deserve. And it's a no-win scenario for these clubs, these big clubs playing smaller clubs. You cannot win. So sometimes that mentally takes you off the ball. And if you do that, you're in serious, danger of paying the price. And that's what happened to Bournemouth yesterday. They paid the price for making too many changes, and I'm not giving due respect to a team who are, 4 leagues below them.
There was a win for Leicester's opponents on Thursday, Liverpool at the weekend in the FA Cup. What are you expecting, Matt, from that one? It always was going to be a massive game for Leicester City, even bigger now, really, with what happened yesterday.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And it seems quite a daunting prospect right now, doesn't it? If it didn't before. Even Brendan Rodgers was, saying yesterday he saw some worrying signs in the performance, which is quite an admittance from his point of view, his perspective. Then looking ahead to Thursday, got different things to ponder, hasn't he? We all thought that was pretty much a strong enough team yesterday. Probably the strongest available by 1 or 2, maybe Daka alongside Iheanacho, I don't know, or whichever way. But he hasn't got too many options to change the heart of the problem yesterday, which was the defensive unit, and I include midfielders in that as well a bit, and even wide players to a degree, because they were a little bit timid at times, Lookman and Barnes, in truth. I don't know, he'll perhaps consider the wisdom or lack of it of putting Amate and Iheanacho straight back into the fray after travelling from the AFCON, but I'm sure they were fit and ready to go. Sometimes it takes your brain a bit time to get back up to speed after their efforts out there. But again, that's in hindsight. We must have considered them ready and prepared enough beforehand. And I don't know, what changes does he make? that whilst we said there's a very strong bench, that shows how many who, would deserve to sort of replace anyone on the back of yesterday's performance, sorry. But I don't know, he's got a problem, hasn't he? He's got a problem because, confidence has taken a real blow on that. And that's the last place you need to go. It's Anfield, isn't it? And I don't know. I don't expect Mane and Salah will be featuring, possibly, from the bench after their exertions yesterday. But it's, you're sort of scrambling around wondering, almost like, which hole to plug first, sort of thing. What do I do there? What do I do there? And you don't, as Gerry says there, you don't want to overindulge on that and sort of panic as such and try and cram everything into a couple of days training preparation. End of the days, the similar group of players beat Liverpool not long ago, albeit in very against the odds situation. But so I suppose you've got to remind them of that at the same time. You can't be all too doom and gloom. You've got to sort of accentuate any positives as best you can, remind themselves of what they are capable of. But at the same time, and again, Gerry's right, don't over-deliberate the point and drag the low mood on, but they need to be discussed about how they can prevent conceding a hatful against Liverpool, which is a possibility. Just got to sharpen their mind. You have to talk to them like schoolboys and say, well, this is what I want you to do, but sharpen their mind and they'll do the right thing because they've got to where they are as professional players. They're there for a reason. They haven't fluked it. But the approach, and application and attitude is so important in games before ability alone.
Yeah, I think I brought up yesterday, Gerry, that there are shades of the last time Leicester played Liverpool back in December of coming off the back of a relatively disappointing game. It was 6-3 against Man City, wasn't it? Yes, Leicester did come back in the second half of that one, but still everything was against Leicester in terms of injuries and players that were out, and they ended up winning there. So hopefully something similar again may repeat itself, that after a really disappointing game yesterday, things have been against Leicester. Nobody's expecting them to go to Anfield and get anything. You never know. They might go and get something.
Yeah, that is one of the things you can take out is, after the Man City defeat. But obviously they scored 3 goals in that game, whereas yesterday, obviously they got the goal just before half-time, which was I was thinking of saying, was it a lifeline yesterday? Maybe, but then obviously the game turned again on its head and the second half sort of fizzled out after the 4th goal went in. So the positives from the Man City game you can't really take out from the Forest game going into the Liverpool match. But it's a similar kind of scenario where you've come off the back of a disappointing defeat and you have to use that as your motivation to make sure that doesn't happen again. It's as pure simple as that. Sometimes football, as I've said there, you can overanalyze, you can spend as much time as you want trying to sort your tactics out, but at times like this, when people are down and they're soul searching, looking for a little bit of consistency, a little bit of quality, you just have to focus on upstairs grit and determination, a willingness not to let that replicate itself, what happened yesterday. And for me, that is the main way you approach the game on Thursday night. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and regardless of what happened yesterday, Gerry, Brendan Rodgers and Leicester, they'll believe that they can go to Anfield and get something and get a win.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously the mood in the camp will sort of, give Brendan Rodgers a little bit of a sniff of whether or not, that is to be true. And so that's why it's really important that they analysed the game yesterday and what went wrong and why it went wrong, but then you have to move on. The mood in the camp has to be good. Confidence has to be good. And that's where a manager really makes his money, along with his coaching staff. because there's no point going into this game against Liverpool mentally, again, not ready to go to war. And it's going to be a different game than it was yesterday. It's as simple as that. Technically, the way the game gets played out, technically, it's going to be a different game than what we've seen yesterday. And so, in saying that, in a way, it might be a little bit easier for Leicester to cope with the style of Liverpool, believe it or not, in a way. But for sure, mentally, they have to hit the reset button and, try and move what happened yesterday out of their mind, hit the reset button and go again on Thursday.
Yeah, I know you mentioned, obviously, the fact that Sadio Mane, Mo Salah, Matt will have to travel. Liverpool obviously have a very good squad, but that's two of their best players that even if they do start, which you'll be surprised if they do, that there must be some fatigue in there.
Yeah, they've got decent replacements, haven't they? But maybe not to that standard. It will be a bonus, a plus for Leicester if they're not involved at all, or even from the bench. Of course it will. But you say Liverpool have got enough quality, haven't they, to cause problems for any team, regardless of whether their top men are performing. But I think Gerry's mentioned there, about the grit and determination, the preparation as well, a little bit for this week going up to it. Brendan Rodgers, he'll be as disappointed and frustrated as anyone. Slightly embarrassed maybe even by that performance, but he can't really. He can say his piece to the players, pick up certain scenarios, say we need to do this and adjust this, etc. More efficient at this, but he's got to hide that frustration, or certainly put it away for a little while and try and make the players feel as best as possible as well. And like I say, remind them of what they are capable of. And say, listen, okay, that went horribly wrong. It doesn't mean the next 3, 4, 5 games have to go horribly wrong off the back of it. Be strong, character-wise. You just mentioned examples there, to a lesser degree, but it's Man City. It looked to be horrific early on, didn't it? It was 4-0 after half an hour, wasn't it? Even before half-time. They turned that round within the course of one game to a level, winning the second half. Just a consolation, really, but a positive. Didn't have that the weekend, but to then go and flip that round and be resilient. And it's not like they haven't got the capability, that weaponry or that attitude amongst themselves to knuckle down, battle away, put the bodies on the line. And everyone was lauding them for their efforts and their determination. And it's Liverpool. It needs to be, it's going to need to be similar again on Thursday, you would imagine. But that's how it should have been against Forest as well. That same edge to the game. Can't just turn it on and off. But I wouldn't back against them putting up certainly a better performance against Liverpool than they did against Notts Forest. But it's a little bit shutting the gate, isn't it? After the horse has bolted, certainly in terms of the FA Cup. And strangely, it would take the edge off it if they were to get a result against Liverpool, but it wouldn't make people forget about it.
Do you think that they will, Gerry? Well, at least hopefully put up a better performance than what we
Yeah, I'm positive, and that's probably at the moment, at this moment in time as we're speaking, probably the best that anyone can hope for is the performance levels have to be better, and then you're hoping and praying that the result then will take care of itself. But obviously going up against Liverpool, who, are in good form themselves at the moment, decent form, sitting second at the table. You're hoping and praying that they have an off day on Thursday night. Whether or not they will, I'm sure Jurgen Klopp will be desperate to try and close the gap further between themselves and Manchester City. I think they've got a game in hand, haven't they, over Manchester City at some stage. But all Leicester can do is concentrate on themselves, and the starting point for that is the performance. It's as simple as that. You can work on the tactical side of things, the technical side of stuff as well, but I'll go back to it. It's all about the mental approach. You get the mental approach right, then the performance invariably looks after itself. And at this moment in time, that's all Brendan can worry about. And probably closer to game, as he sees the players' attitude, the confidence unfold and come out, then we can start thinking about how do we get a result here. But that's your starting point, is a performance. So it's pretty easy for Brendan in regards to how he approaches the players and speaks to them, because that is the starting point for Thursday night.
It's a big week, Matt, isn't it? It's a big month, really, for Leicester. You've got West Ham, of course, on Sunday. Then it's Randers in the UEFA Conference League. So these big games now are coming thick and fast. So I guess on one hand, you can look at it and say yesterday can be forgotten about if Leicester go on a really good run. On another one, you don't want to get them stuck in a rot or anything and let yesterday's negative result have an impact.
No, that's right. A lot of games coming up, different competitions, and it's a challenge for them, isn't it? Really, to bounce back from the weekend. But some footballers need to be resilient though as well. They need to cope with situations. You can't be emotionally unstable individually and as a group. You take knocks all the time. Very few teams in the land have positivity all the time, and more often than not, it is a little bit topsy-turvy. And the manner of the defeat will hurt, and the scoreline, of course, it will. And considering the opposition, good team that Notts Forest are, Nottingham Forest, albeit in the Championship. So there's a dent to their pride, and hopefully that will spur a reaction. They weren't. It's not like all of a sudden, they're a hopeless bunch of players who should never be on that stage. They've shown over a period of time that they're very capable side. So, it's just sort of recapturing that edge about them. I'd like to see, I was going to say someone, but a group of the players, a number of the players sort of grab hold of things by the scruff of the neck, not literally, but take hold, take charge a little bit. It seems that it's a little bit, they're all left to their own devices a little bit. I think Gerry Tillemans tries to do his piece. He hasn't been in top form of late, which hasn't helped. But the players all do their thing a little bit, but do bark at each other and roll the sleeves up and demand a performance, like a rough and ready performance when it's needed out of each other. Or, not necessarily, harping back to our days, but myself and Gerry, Steve Walsh, Frank Sinclair, we were best mates off the pitch, pretty good mates on the pitch most of the time. You wouldn't have thought so when we were playing. You can see centre forwards' heads looking at us in bewilderment at the way we were going at each other. And whether it's Gerry to Frank or Frank to me or whatever. But that was a G-up we needed. It needed to keep us bang on our game. It used to startle opposition. That was one benefit of it. They thought, hang on a minute, we're in a game here. And then it used to keep us on our toes as individuals. I don't see too much of that with Leicester. Just a small point. I don't know. It's just a feeling that they give off, in my opinion. I'd like to see someone sort of take charge a little bit. They're going to have to. You have to try and not forget, because that'd be the wrong thing to do. Use it as a reminder, but brush off the disappointment. Because they start feeling sorry for themselves a little bit, and say they get off to a rocky start against Liverpool on Thursday. Couple of goals down. If the heads drop, then they get a pasting, and then it is a problem. In the next game, and the game after that, they'll feel the effect. So they've got to show some belief and show some spirit. that gets mentioned quite regularly about Leicester City. Now's a chance, a time that you really need to show it.
Yep, we'll be live on Matchday Live, of course, on Thursday evening. I think it's a 7:45 kickoff. So we'll have Matchday Live from 6:15. Gerry, you'll be at Anfield, won't you, of course, on Thursday. So enjoy that trip up there. Right, before we finish, we've got our football Jenga to do. Matt, you said you didn't want to hark back to your era too much, but I've done that, actually, for our football Jenga.
That'll probably suit me better than harping back to the weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Right, Liverpool against Leicester, or Leicester against Liverpool at Filbert Street on the 3rd of March 2001. Okay, you got that date in your mind, 3rd of March 2001. Leicester won 2-0 against Liverpool at Filbert Street. Now, I want you to name for me, please, any of the players that were involved on the pitch that day. So either starting 11 for Leicester or Liverpool, and then they each made 3 substitutes, so either of the 3 substitutes as well, full team. So the 3rd of March 2001, and Matt, you can start us off for me, please.
Well, this is a risk, because I know how many times he was on the treatment table. Gerry Taggart.
Correct.
Heskey. Emile Heskey.
Ooh.
Yeah, playing for Liverpool at that time, yeah.
Ooh. Double bluff.
Double bluff.
Yeah, I'm thinking he's gone by then, but then,
Yeah, he went to Liverpool.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Oh, dear. Robbie Savage. I think he got a bit of stick that game, Tags, didn't he?
Yeah. Steven Gerrard.
Was he, is it?
Jimmy Carragher.
Me.
Yeah, again, don't know why that one took so long, but we've got it.
Adi Akinbaye.
Who'd be keeper then? That's got to be. Oh. No, I don't want to risk that, goalkeeper. Can't remember when. Right. Jamie Redknapp.
No.
No.
Oh, no.
No.
He didn't feature at all.
No. So, Gerry, you have to give me one to win it.
Frank Sinclair.
Correct.
Gets it.
Yeah,
Right.
should have gone for Frank, shouldn't I? Mind, I thought, yeah, well, she'd gone then, hadn't he? Or was on the way out.
Yeah, so the rest...
Who played in midfield for Liverpool? Was it?
Gerard McAllister and Christian Ziege, or Nick Barmby as well.
Gary Mack played in that.
Yeah. So the Leicester team, we'll start with, won 2-0, by the way. Muzzy Izzet and Akinbaye got the goals. It was Simon Royce in goal.
Good shot. I didn't go for the keeper.
Yeah, I thought when you were thinking about it, you might have struggled there. Matt Elliott, Callum Davison, Matt Elliott, Gary Rowett, Gerry Taggart, Frank Sinclair, Junior Lewis, Muzzy Izzet, Robbie Savage, Adi Akinbaye and Dean Sturridge was the starting 11. Andy and Pete Arne Gunnarsson and Trevor Benjamin came off the bench. And then for Liverpool, it was Sander Westerveld, Marcus Babbels, Stefan Honcho, Sammy Hoopier, Jamie Carragher, Steven Gerrard, Gary McAllister, Christian Ziege, Nick Barmby, Robbie Fowler and Emile Heskey. And then Michael Owen, Didi Hamann and Danny Murphy came off the bench.
Hamann.
How did we win that game?
Mate, Tags, I was just going to say the exact same, yeah.
First game.
How did we win that? I remember Junior Lewis had a stormer.
Yeah.
I think that was one of his early games. He didn't quite repeat that too often. But
that have been when, because you started that season really well, didn't you?
Yeah.
we were.
But then
So we were in the top, after that game. We were in the top 5. After that game.
James, we were top of the league after 8 games.
Yeah.
Well, and then even still in March, you were.
We were never ever out of the top 6 or 7, and then after we beat Liverpool, which was the weekend before the quarterfinals of the cup, we were top 5.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
We ended up 15th, I think, or something.
Yeah, 14th, I think we finished. But unbelievable. Looking at that team.
Yeah, to be fair. 14th.
And I think no disrespect to some of them, but yeah.
Yeah, collectively. It's a funny old game, son. Funny old game.
Well done to Gerry. You've done a couple of wins in a row for you, Gerry, although there is an asterisk next to you. Won a few.
Well, it doesn't matter. You know, you're the adjudicator.
Yeah, you got a big one for you, Gerry.
You and Roberts is just going to have to move on.
All right. Well, thanks to you both. I'll speak to you, Matt, won't I? In the studio on Thursday. Gerry will be at Anfield, so yeah, do join us again at 6:15. But have a great week, guys.
Thanks a lot, Dan. See you, Matt.
See you, Tags. Take care, mate.